So approaches to learning for me is about understanding how you learn. So I'll give an example. When I was studying for my biology exam just now, I went online, went to YouTube, and there's this channel, it's called IB, like Cole, and it's former IB students who have done the IB and they're giving advice. And he said, you know what, don't make notes. Don't make notes, just deep read and let everything sink in and then write summaries. And I thought about it and I tried it, but I realized that wouldn't work for me because of the way my brain works. So for example, this is my book, and as you can see, I have a lot of diagrams. And the thing is, in an exam, if I can't remember what I wrote on a page, I just have to remember the type of diagram that I drew on it, and then I will be able to remember what I wrote. So something like deep reading and not making notes is not about to help a learner like myself, who is more visual and approaches their learning in a more visual type of way. So it's important to know and understand how you learn, because you'll get a lot of advice from people telling you, oh, you should do this and you should do that. But approaches to learning for me is understanding how you learn, and things like collaboration, communication, reflection facilitate that understanding of understanding of knowing how I will get this information into my head. And another example I will give is at the beginning of IB2, for example, when a lot of people were stressed out, and the teachers were like looking through our timetables to give us advice. So I, for example, go home, relax for 1 hour, then I'll work for 5 hours. And some of my teachers were horrified and said, no, when you go home, you should relax for like maybe 2 hours. And then other teachers were like, no, when you go home, maybe do a lot of the work first, and then you can go to bed earlier so that you sleep and you're fresh for the next day. And I did try, and it kind of threw me off my rhythm because I was less productive. And when I tried to start working earlier so that I can sleep earlier, my brain wouldn't focus because I need that 1 hour between my coming home and my work in order to get things rolling in my head. So that's part of understanding your model of learning, and approaches to learning comes in when you have that model. It helps you create that model. And I am not saying that I have a perfect model. I'm not saying to ignore people's advice. But for example, having a model that you have, like understanding that I'm a visual learner, understanding that I need to walk or move when I revise things, that'll give you a starting point. And then you can use other things like reflection to improve it. For example, I know that I wasn't too good at organization. One of the things that helped me improve with my organization is learning from my peers. So I wasn't exactly copying her, but I noticed that she was very on top of things. She'd get things like these little trivial things. She'd get them out of the way. Unlike what I do, is like, oh, I'll send this email when I get home. I'll do this when I get home. She got them out of the way, and then it wouldn't accumulate as it was in my case. And then I learned from her that maybe I should just do these things earlier on, and I did start doing that. She didn't notice that I was copying her, but I did, and that's how I'm actually much more organized right now. And so approaches to learning is like about creating that model for yourself, and then things like organization, things like reflection, collaboration are what are going to refine that model for you. So for example, I'm going to talk about just some of the 7 elements that are really specific to me. So collaboration, as I said, I mentioned my friend before, and I really hadn't worked with her until IB, because usually when you're in a class, you're just like, you do your assignments separately, you hand them in separately, and that's just it. But in IB, you have programs like CAS, you have classes together, and you're mixing with people that you may not have mixed with before in the last 5 years of your high school, but you're having to work with them in planning projects. When you're in Interact, I was in Interact, for example, and I had to work really well with people in my team that I wouldn't have thought I was like work well with, but I did. And so when I was working with Megan on the activity Girl Up, like that's when I started learning about how organized she is and how I can learn from her. So that collaboration helped facilitate my learning as well, and it helped me improve my model for learning. And then there's communicating. This one came later for me because I only started communicating when I reached breaking point, which was a problem. And the thing is, like, I know I'm an independent learner, but I realized that independent learning doesn't mean I can't ask for a teacher's support. And so when I started doing that, I found that things became much easier. So for example, in this previous exam, I was finding this certain experiment difficult to understand. And so I was like, you know what, let me talk to my biology teacher about this. And I did, and she said, okay, why don't you guys come in and I'll get the equipment for you and just you'll play around with it and you try to understand it. And we did come in. And lucky enough, on the exam, that was the exact same experiment that came up. And I was like, yes, I know this. And so communicating can really help, and it's important because that's what helps facilitate learning. And the last one is organization, which is kind of the bane of my existence, as I said before, because like it took me a while to get to that level where I'm happy with my organization, and like it also took the influence of my friends like Megan, the influence of things like my IAs, because some of them just went out of control, and I realized, you know what, I have to stop, I have to reflect and think about how I'm going to reorganize myself. And so making timetables, having to-do lists, and planning for a day, a week, a month is what helped me eventually get myself together, and also learning from my classmates, like my more organized classmate also helped me get myself together. So overall, for me, approaches to learning is having your model for learning and then using these other elements that the MYP has prescribed to refine it.